Let's talk about a different way to play Dungeons & Dragons called Play by Post, or PBP. My name is Josh Lindquist, I'm a professional dungeon master, and I'm going to walk you through how to do a Play by Post game. So Play by Post Dungeons & Dragons is different than sitting around a table and playing with friends, or even doing it virtually where you're doing a Zoom session and interacting in real time like that. Play by Post is where you do everything through written communication. So anything that would be conveyed verbally between you and your players in a normal D&D game, you're going to do it over written communication. I like to use Discord to organize my server. I'll go through how I organize it in a minute, but basically you're doing the same thing you do when you're running a game in person or over Zoom. You're conveying to the players through words what they see, what's around them, what they hear, what they're experiencing, and then they tell you what they want to do, and then the gameplay ensues. It's just a continuously running game of D&D. So the way that I like to structure my server is that I go through and have the general channel, which is the main one where players tell you what they're doing, where you as the DM post what's going on, what they're seeing, what they're experiencing. That's kind of the main gameplay channel. Underneath it, I have out of character or OOC general. That's kind of where people can ask questions. People can say if they're going to be out of town for a while. Now, in addition to those two channels, it's always good to have character channels for each player. That way they can post things specific to their character in that channel. They can also keep track of certain things that affect just their character. I also recommend having a maps channel, a dice rolling channel. If you're playing D&D 5e, Avray is a great bot. I use that a lot for my dice rolls. It links up with D&D Beyond in a really easy way. It's also always good to have party XP and party loot. Another one is notable NPCs. This comes in very handy where people can write the name of a notable NPC, a quick one-sentence thing. It can be the DM or the players, just so they can keep track of everyone they've met who might be important later on. Now let's jump into the pros and cons of Play by Post. The pros are the flexibility. It works with everyone's schedule. It's kind of a slowly, continuously running game. If you're a writer like myself, it can be really fun to be able to take time to think about things and write them out, as opposed to improvising in the moment, which can be really fun, but you're still interacting with your players and kind of curtailing things based on their experience and what they do. The flexibility for time zones has been the biggest benefit, in my opinion. Some of the cons are that it's not as engaging, or people lose interest, especially when certain encounters take a long time in real life. Sometimes a really intricate combat, and if you have a larger party, that can take a long time because most people are checking in once a day, sometimes more often. Now, some tips for how to make your play-by-post more engaging. For me, I've found that having a smaller party size between 4 to 6 players is ideal. When it comes to combat, I've found that having more environmental things is helpful because this combat is kind of happening slowly. People have a lot more time to really keep track of what's going on in the Discord, and how to keep track of what's happening in the terrain. So you can add a lot more environmental things so that players are kind of torn during their turn of, hey, do I go engage with that thing that I need to get to before the combat ends, or do I want to attack an enemy? You can kind of pull them in different areas. Quick thing on virtual tabletops or VTTs. There are some great ones out there. I don't use them because I like to have full creative control. So I tend to use just graph paper. That way I can just kind of show my players. I take pictures overhead with my phone. I can crop it a certain way if there's certain things I don't want them to see on the map. And I just post that in our map channel, and then people can mark on the thing where they want to move. It makes it pretty easy, and it gives me full creative control of the terrain, so I'm not limited by any VTT I choose to use. Another thing with Play by Post, with the way that it's continuously slowly running, when you're in a situation where, like, say the players are in a tavern or meeting up with a council that runs a city, and it's just very roleplay heavy, it's not combat, that can be a little weird because you might have a player that's online and that's going back and forth with you talking in character. And then there's a bunch of other players who are offline that won't be on until the next day. So you want to kind of have it where NPCs will turn and talk to one character specifically, And then as they're talking, someone else can come in because again, they've been delayed by real life. They can come in and say, "Hey, I have these questions in character," and then the NPC talks to them. And so you kind of want to wait till everyone's spoken their piece before you move on from an encounter like that. But it's just always good to let people, if they're really busy with something in real life, and then they finally come on and they're like, "Oh, when we were talking to that queen, I would have mentioned this or asked if I could have gotten this." And you can always retcon stuff essentially and be like, "Oh yeah, you know what? She would have said this to your request and you would have gotten this." Anyway, back to where we're at. So, in conclusion, play by post is a lot different than the normal D&D experience with your friends virtually or in person. I very much enjoy playing that way, but I also really enjoy play by post. It kind of helps me scratch my D&D itch in between sessions, and I don't have to deal with the scheduling headache that I normally do with other games. So, play by post has been really fun and rewarding. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what your questions are. I can hopefully think of more tips to help you out, but I've had a lot of fun doing this. My players have seemed to enjoy it, so let me know your questions, and I hope that your first play by post game is a nat 20. Thanks for watching.